Right now, Bitcoin's actually flashing a massive signal on the weekly time frame. So we need to be talking about what the signal is and what's likely to be happening for the rest of the cycle. I have a lot of charts and I have a lot of data pieces actually ready for you guys. So we're going to be talking about the short term as well, and we're going to be discovering what's going to be happening for the rest of the week. Not only am I going to be talking about Bitcoin, I'm also going to be talking about Ethereum as well, and we're going to be seeing what's going to be happening for Ethereum, since we're actually potentially in some danger here for Ethereum. So I'm going to be covering what's going to be happening for Ethereum also. So with that being said, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight away into this banger. Bow. So looking at this chart, you can see the Bitcoin right now is flashing a sell signal on the super trend indicator. And the last time we got the sell signal was in 2022, where we actually came towards the downside and we entered a bear market. And right now we're actually flashing the same signal, and you can see right now that it's potentially indicating that the top is in, and it's likely we're going to be going towards the downside. So in my opinion, since this indicator is flashed alongside other indicators that I'm going to cover in a second, I think that the momentum is towards the downside, and we're likely going to be seeing lower prices in the coming few months. So you can see by this chart, we're actually forming a market maker sell model, and we're entering the phase where we're in a range and we're going to be moving towards the downside shortly. But of course, we need to be talking about the fact that if we actually come and sweep the lows, are we going to be seeing a relief rally towards the upside before we actually start to head towards the downside? And we need to be discovering how this range is going to actually unfold. And of course, you can see right now that we had two previous ranges that led us towards the upside. You have your distribution phase, and typically you actually have two ranges that lead you towards the downside before you have another accumulation phase at the bear market bottom. But right now we need to focus on this range over here. So I have a few charts that we're going to be dissecting, and we're going to be looking at to actually determine what's going to be happening next. So you can see by this chart, we had our US interest rate cut, and of course we've been moving towards the downside ever since, exactly like we talked about on the channel. I was actually pointing out as we were rallying that it's likely once we get the cut, we're going to be moving towards the downside, looking at history. And of course, that's exactly what's been playing out. But of course, we need to be talking about the Bank of Japan's rate decision this Friday, since of course the interest rates for the US has actually come down by 25 basis points. But if Japan actually starts to hike rates, it's a potential carry trade unwind, like I talked about in the previous video, that's potentially going to be playing out. So if you want an explanation on that, make sure to be watching the last video. But of course, every time we've seen a Bank of Japan actually hiking rates, we've actually moved towards the downside, and it's possible that we're going to be seeing the same thing, especially if the US stock market actually starts to move towards the downside also. But right now, looking at the probabilities of a rate hike by the Bank of Japan, it's actually 98% on Polymarket, indicating that this is basically priced in, and of course it's likely we're going to be getting that hike. But we still can see a sell in the US markets, which may actually cause Bitcoin to come down again, since of course every single time previously that this has happened, we've moved towards the downside. But of course, I need to note that this time around, when we actually moved towards the downside in January, was actually due to tariffs also that led us towards a 32% correction. So right now, it is possible that of course we can move in towards the downside, but maybe not to the same magnitude. But in that short term, you can see that Bitcoin's actually been breaking down from this ascending triangle, exactly like we've been talking about on the channel. And we're actually breaking down from this bear flag, and we're currently retesting the support level of the bear flag right now. So it is possible that we are going to be continuing towards the downside some more, especially with the interest rate decision on Friday. So that's one thing to be talking about. And if we do come down towards the downside, I do think that it's likely we're going to be testing this major level of support and previous level of major resistance. So of course, it was resistance in 2021, that was our all-time high, and in 2024 that was the all-time high for the year. And of course, we had a lot of resistance in that region before we actually broke above, and right now it's likely we can come and test it again, and then we're going to be bouncing towards the upside. So this is a major level that I'm going to be paying attention to, so just keep that in mind. If we do come in towards this level, I am likely to be taking a trade, and I'm likely to be buying Bitcoin, since I do think we're going to be getting a relief rally in towards the 50-week moving average before we actually move towards the downside again. Now, the reason I do think we're potentially going to be testing a 50-week moving average is the fact that we actually tested our 50-week moving average and 50-week exponential moving average band last cycle right before actually entering a bear market. So once we lost it, we retested it, getting a relief rally after testing some major support, and then we move towards the downside. And I do think that if we test this major support level, we're going to be already starting to have a relief rally before moving towards the downside. And of course, if we actually look at this chart over here, you can see that every cycle not only 2021, so 2017 and 2018 transition and the 2013 to 14 transition. Once we lost the 50-week moving average, we actually retested it before actually entering a bear market. So I don't think this time is going to be any different. So that's going to be the plan. If we move towards a downside first and towards this major support level, I think we're going to be having a bounce. And that bounce is going to be the last point before we actually enter a bear market, and we're going to be moving towards a downside. But in that short term, we've been grabbing liquidity. So like you can see already, we've been moving towards the downside and we've been breaking down on this ascending triangle. And right now, the liquidity towards the downside has been taken. And now the majority actually resides above us. So of course, looking at that short-term price action, we've actually reclaimed the mid-range of this short-term range that I've actually plotted out. And you can see that if we actually reclaim this weekly open, I do think it's possible we can actually move towards a monthly open, and maybe we can test the yearly open. And in that case, if we do come back down and we deviate the high, I do think it's likely we're going to be moving in towards that 70k region. But of course, if we do just come below and we actually move in towards this 80k region, and we actually take this wick that we actually formed previously on the bottom in November, then I do think that on the reclaim of this range, I am likely to be taking a position, especially if we get some bullish divergence on a higher time frame and some confirmations indicating that this is going to be a bottom. I think that that's going to be a beautiful opportunity to be taking a long position. And of course, I'm going to be targeting at least the range highs, if not more. And of course, that's just a scenario that we do reclaim the range without testing the major support level. But of course, if we don't reclaim the range and we continue to break down from this bear flag formation and this ascending triangle formation as well, I do think that the next support level is going to be at 70k. And in that position, I'm not going to be taking a buy position yet because we haven't reclaimed the range, of course. But if we continue to move towards the downside, I do think this will be the next support level at 70k. And that's where I'm going to be available to actually be taking a long position. And I'm going to be targeting at least the yearly open, if not the 50-week moving average. So if you want to be trading for yourself, make sure to be clicking that first link down below for LBank. LBank's offering the community a $100 position voucher and a 50% deposit bonus up to $2,500. So if you deposit $5,000, you're going to be getting $2,500 on top, and a generous refund of up to $5,000 on your first position. So if you lose 5k on your first position, you're going to be refunded the whole amount. So if you click that first link down below, it will take you to this page over here, and you can see you have just over a week to actually claim this amazing deal. And I will not be actually fading this if I were you. You can see if you deposit 5k, you can be getting 2.5k on top. If you deposit 2.5k, you can get 1,250 on top, 1,500, etc. And this is an amazing deposit bonus that you can get in. And on top of that, you have your loss protection on your first trade, and you can have a $100 position voucher on top. So of course, I'll be getting your accounts ready since we have a lot of potential trades actually landing up right now. And I think if Bitcoin actually decides to actually move towards a downside, then I do think we could be taking some nice trades back towards the upside. Looking at USDT dominance, you can see that we're actually hovering around the highs. And just like I mentioned previously, we're potentially forming this bull flag. And you can see right now that we're actually starting to break out. So of course, it is possible that we're already going to be moving towards the upside for USDT dominance, which just means we're going to be seeing further price action towards the downside for crypto if USDT dominance decides to go towards the upside. And of course, we may be repeating history if we break above this orange resistance level, since in 2021 into 2022, once we broke that resistance level after forming a double bottom, we actually moved in towards a prolonged bear market where we moved all the way down to 15k once USDT dominance actually broke above this resistance level. So right now we're actually forming a similar structure. We have a double bottom and we're actually testing this orange resistance level. So we want to be seeing USDT dominance stay below if you're bullish. But if we continue to move above it, then I do think, of course, Bitcoin can hit 70k, if not lower. So this is one major thing that we need to be monitoring. And of course, in the coming months, I've mentioned already that the monthly MACD is bearish and it's angled towards the downside, and it's looking like it can start expanding and moving towards the downside with continuous histogram ticks being red and actually expanding also. So I do think that, of course, we have further downside to go. Regardless if we get a relief rally or not, I still think that we're going to be moving towards the downside, since the MACD actually flipped bearish in 2021 into 2022. We got a relief rally even though it was already bearish, and then we continued towards the downside, and the MACD continued to actually show the momentum was fading, and that relief rally was just a massive trap. So I do think if we still get this relief rally, it's going to be a trap and we're going to be moving towards the downside. Of course, you can also see that the timing of the cycle suggests the same thing. We're actually hitting we've actually exceeded the bullish timing that we've actually normally see. So that's 1,065 days. We've already exceeded that, and we're moving in towards this phase where we have about 365 days of downside, and we're already about 60 days in. So of course, it's likely for the next 300 days, we're likely to see downwards price action. In my opinion, I still think the 4-year cycle holds, since I have no data to prove otherwise, and there's no factual evidence to suggest that the 4-year cycle is over, like some people are actually pointing out already. So I think it's dangerous to actually be thinking that we're still bullish, even though you have major signals flashing right now, and you have major warnings that are actually flashing, telling us that momentum is fading and we are likely to be moving towards the downside. But of course, if I do see convincing signal in the bottom, when we actually move sub 70k, maybe in towards the 60k region, then of course I can actually adjust this, and I can actually look at maybe this chart and say the timing is maybe wrong and we may be forming a major bottom right now. But until then, I still think we're going to be moving towards the downside. Now looking at Ethereum, you can already see that we're moving back to the support level, like I've highlighted, since we had this weak bounce from this major support level. And I did mention that it's likely we're going to be coming towards the downside again, and that's exactly what's been happening. So of course, if we do continue towards the downside again, it's likely that we can maybe form a double bottom, and then we're going to be moving up for Ethereum, and that may equate to Bitcoin actually reaching 70k, and then of course Ethereum may be testing the support level and then moving towards the upside again. So that's one thing to be bearing in mind. You can see as well, we're actually losing the 50-week moving average. So of course, this is a major warning sign for Ethereum, and it's looking like momentum is fading right now. So of course, you can look at the short-term trend line, and if we do start to lose this, it is possible that Ethereum continues towards the downside some more. Looking at this chart, we can see that ETH as well is losing strength while moving back in towards this trend line. So of course, I don't think that Ethereum is going to be outperforming Bitcoin anytime soon. It's likely that we continue to actually chop around and we continue to actually move towards the downside as the market develops. But of course, Ethereum is going to be tracking what Bitcoin does. So if Bitcoin moves towards the downside some more, you're going to be seeing Ethereum potentially losing the support level if the drip is actually very, very deep. So of course, I'm going to be charting Bitcoin, and I'm going to be keeping up to date with what's going to be happening with Bitcoin, and then maybe we can actually look at what's going to be happening for Ethereum. So make sure to be checking that second link down below. Also for my free community, you can see my free community that I've actually posted some nice analysis in there for the week, and of course I'm going to be updating you guys regularly more in there, especially if there's breaking news and prices actually moving quite fast. Then this is the fastest place where I can update you guys, and of course it's free for now, but soon I'm going to be making this private. So make sure to be joining up if you want to be getting some interesting data points, some trade ideas, and of course the latest news and market insights. Make sure to also follow me on X to be staying up to date with all my updates, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a blessed rest of your day. Peace guys, see ya, bye bye.